In the summer of 1943, on the sweeping grasslands of the Soviet Union, one of the largest tank battles in human history erupted. It was a clash of steel, fire, and willpower, fought not just for territory but for the very future of World War II. The name of the battlefield? Prokhorovka. Lines of fire. Prokhorovka is not just a story of armored might, it's a window into the strategy, desperation, and determination that defined the Battle of Kursk and in many ways, sealed the fate of Nazi Germany on the Eastern Front. Fire background, the stakes in the East. By 1943, the tide of war was beginning to shift. After Hitler's catastrophic defeat at Stalingrad, German forces were in retreat, but not defeated. Hitler sought to regain the initiative by launching Operation Citadel, a massive offensive aimed at eliminating the Soviet bulge around the city of Kursk. His goal? Encircle and destroy Soviet forces in the salient, break their momentum, and prove that Germany still had the power to dictate the outcome of the war in the East. The Soviets, under Stalin and the Red Army High Command, knew the attack was coming. Thanks to intelligence intercepts and reconnaissance, they prepared extensively, digging trenches, laying mines, and deploying thousands of tanks and artillery pieces. The stage was set for a battle of unprecedented scale. Crossroads Kursk and the Southern Thrust. The Battle of Kursk began on July 5, 1943, with German forces attacking from both north and south to pinch off the salient. The southern pincer, led by Field Marshal Erich von Manstein's Army Group South, made the deepest gains. Within the southern sector was the 2 SS Panzer Corps, including the elite Leibstandarte, Das Reich and Totenkopf divisions, armed with Tiger I tanks, Panthers and assault guns. Their objective was to drive north and meet with German forces attacking from the opposite direction. Standing in their path was the Soviet 5th Guards Tank Army, commanded by General Pavel Rotmistrov, whose job was to stop the Germans at all costs. The place where they would meet? A small rural town called Prokhorovka. Triangular flag Prokhorovka, July 12, 1943. The battlefield around Prokhorovka was open farmland, broken by ridges, rail lines and streams. Visibility was good. Maneuverability was limited. Both sides massed enormous numbers of tanks for a decisive clash. Soviet forces, over 800 tanks including T-34s and T-70s. German forces, around 300 tanks and assault guns including Tiger I heavy tanks. What made Prokhorovka unique? It was not a long-range tank duel. It was close-range, chaotic, head-on warfare. The Soviets launched frontal charges into the advancing German panzers, often at distances of 100 to 200 meters. The density of the battlefield, hundreds of tanks packed into a small area, meant the battle was fought in violent, swirling melees, where maneuvering was limited and reaction time was seconds. Bomb the battle unfolds. At dawn on July 12, Soviet artillery began pounding German positions, and the 5th Guards Tank Army surged forward. Soviet tanks advanced through smoke and fire, charging into well-prepared German positions. German Tigers and Panzer IVs responded with deadly precision, knocking out waves of Soviet tanks. The Soviet Air Force and Luftwaffe battled overhead, adding to the chaos. Trenches filled with anti-tank guns and infantry became killing grounds. Soviet crews often rammed German tanks when they couldn't penetrate their armor. Crews fought outside their vehicles with pistols, grenades, and desperation. Though technically outgunned, the Soviet tanks had the advantage in numbers, mobility, and bravery. But the cost was horrifying. Skull and crossbones, casualties and consequences. The battle at Prokhorovka lasted only a single day, but the losses were immense. Soviet losses? Estimates vary, but the Soviets may have lost 400 to 500 tanks in one day. Thousands of men were killed or wounded. Entire Soviet brigades were wiped out. German losses? German tank losses were far fewer, perhaps 80 to 100 tanks damaged or destroyed. But their advance was halted, and they could not break through the Soviet lines. Brain strategy versus sacrifice. Despite their higher losses, the Soviets achieved their goal. They stopped the German advance. Prokhorovka exposed a truth about the Eastern Front. Germany had superior tanks and tactics. But the Soviet Union had greater numbers, smarter long-term strategy, and total mobilization of national resources. After Prokhorovka, Operation Citadel was cancelled. Hitler shifted troops away to deal with the Allied invasion of Sicily. From that moment on, the Germans would be on the defensive in the East, never again launching a major offensive of such scale. Military medal legacy of Prokhorovka. Prokhorovka became a symbol of Soviet resistance and sacrifice. For decades, it was portrayed as a clear Soviet victory, even though tactically the Germans inflicted greater losses. But history has come to see it as what it truly was: a strategic turning point. It proved that Germany could no longer outpace Soviet production. The Red Army was learning, adapting, and becoming more coordinated. The war had entered a new phase, total attrition, in which the Soviet Union had the upper hand. Candle memorials and memory. Today the fields of Prokhorovka are dotted with monuments, museums, and cemeteries. The most iconic is the Belfry of Prokhorovka Field, a soaring bell tower that commemorates those who died in the largest tank clash in history. For Russians, Prokhorovka is a sacred site, where courage and sacrifice overcame steel and despair. Lines of fire. Prokhorovka reminds us that war is not only measured in victories and defeats, but in the courage of those who stood in fire and did not yield. The Battle of Prokhorovka, though lasting less than a day, marked the crack in the armor of the Nazi war machine. It showed that even the strongest tanks, the finest generals, and the most ruthless blitzkrieg could not stop a nation that refused to fall.